Alrighty, happy Thursday, everyone, and welcome back to our No Code Ops live community show. I hope you're doing well wherever in the world you're joining us from today. And if this is your first time, I'm Claudia, Senior Community Specialist here at Zapier, and this is No Code Ops, our amazing Discord community where professionals from all over the world are changing the way they work using AI and automation. And amongst those professionals, we also have our very talented Zapier Solution Partners who are leading that change from the front line. We're very fortunate because today, as a guest, we have one of them. And so without further ado, let me get into the screen. Russell McBride, welcome.
Hey, Claudia, how's it going?
I'm very well. How are you?
I am doing great. I'm really glad to be here and grateful for the opportunity to share about some of the work that I do.
Absolutely. And I had a peek actually at what you're about to share with us today. And so I can't wait for you to show us all the amazing work. I know that you were also a speaker at Zap Connect. So we've been following your work, for a very long time. You're obviously a member of our community. And I thought it was really important for us to share, to bring you as an example of not only what a Zapier solution partner can do, but also as a professional, the way that you're changing, the way you're approaching automation and AI and building all these processes by maintaining a human touch. Because that's what I love the most about the way that you work. You always have that human touch and voice embedded into the work that you do. And so I was really thrilled to have you on today. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it.
And as I always like to say, we like for our live streams to be as interactive as possible. So if you're watching us right now, please leave a comment in the chat. Maybe let us know whether you're part of our community. If you're not, I'll drop a link where you're joining us from and what you're most excited about today in this world of AI. Russ, I've had a peek, as I was saying, at your slides, and I know that you'll be diving into what your journey has been like, which is one of the questions that I was going to ask you anyway. So, should I get your slides?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do that. Alrighty. Data should tell stories. Tell us your story.
Yeah. So a little bit about myself. I actually am not formally trained in like technology or anything in this world. I started as a teacher. I started teaching high school social studies, worked for about 9 years in that field, and just absolutely loved working with students. And it's always funny when I talk about it, because one thing that I tell people, I always told the students in my classroom, you're going to be working jobs when you finish high school, when you finish college, that don't exist today. And it was always ironic because I'm now working a job that didn't exist when I was like teaching kids about that work. So I became one of that statistic. But after 9 years in teaching, I decided it was time to kind of take a break from in the classroom and tried to find a different organization to land. But I wanted to land somewhere where I was still a part of the work of helping kids and students in our community grow up into adults. So I ended up taking a job for Big Brothers Big Sisters of Greater Chattanooga, which is in Tennessee in the United States. And I spent 2 years kind of working on that team, helping them with enrollment and recruitment for mentors, developing systems, and really just trying to help them build out their system. And through that process, kind of worked myself out of the job. I automated so many systems, started working with Zapier, started using AI as a part of our processes, and ended up moving into a new role, serving multiple Big Brothers and Big Sisters organizations, where I was kind of like the automation and AI solutions architect. I worked my way into a dream job, to be honest, where I got to spend all day playing with AI tools, working in automation, and just serving people who have a great mission to serve their communities in the state of Tennessee. And through that work, I got to connect with a bunch of other CEOs on our network and meet people throughout the country and realize that, hey, maybe I could start something here that not only can I continue supporting our Tennessee agencies, but I can also support our agencies across the country. So I launched what I call the McBride Method in July. And basically, we work to support Big Brothers, Big Sisters agencies and other nonprofits to implement AI and automation tools throughout their organization.
Amazing. It's so wild to hear that you're also coming from, the teaching, from a teaching background, obviously myself as well. And it just made me smile when you were talking about your students and how they'll be, in a job that didn't exist back then. And I could remember 10 years ago when I was behind that desk and people, my kids would be like, oh, I'd love to be a YouTuber,
Yeah,
when I'm old. And guess what? They're a teacher
there you are.
now. That's wild. But amazing, Brian. Talk to me about this bride method that you were just mentioning right now. The McBride method. What does that entail?
Yeah. So I mean, essentially, I'm a small agency that supports other businesses through like automation and AI tools. I have a lot of retainer work where I get to build relationships with other agencies. Most of my clients are big brothers, big sisters. I get to know their team. I get to know what makes them tick, and then I start building kind of automations and solutions that help their programs and their organizations. A part of what I love about that work too is, and we just talked about this, I got to go in person to an office in Twin Cities in Minnesota last week. And just to get to share with the team the vision behind using technology and using AI in such a way that like provides a benefit to our community, right? That we're not just doing this to replace jobs. We're not just doing this because it's cool, but we're doing this because it can increase our impact in the world and increase the impact of these awesome organizations.
And you're also obviously part of our Zapier Solution Partner program. I know that it's a fairly we revamped the program and we launched the new version of it back in July. I wonder what your experience been like, because I'm sure we have many agencies and consultants who might be watching us right now, and I'm sure that the work that you're doing and that you'll be showing us today can be quite the inspiration for them as well.
Yeah. I love the partner program. There's a couple of pieces that are really helpful when it comes to it. A is just the credibility of people know me in the network of big brothers, big sisters. But just because people know you, it doesn't always mean that they're like, oh, does this guy know what he's talking about? So going through that process of signing up originally to be an expert and now a solutions partner kind of has that badge of credibility for you as like an organization that like, hey, I know, I keep up with the trainings, I follow these tools. And then the other piece that I think has just been awesome for me, and I have another person who helps me out on my team part-time, to have those trainings on the Solutions Partner portal. There's some excellent beginner and advanced trainings on there that have just been really helpful for me as an organization to just kind of go through and relearn some of the stuff that I learned on the fly, but now I can have some more formal training for that.
Absolutely. Shout out to the team at Zapier, who's, working relentlessly on providing those very helpful trainings. Um, awesome. In terms of the agenda of today, so for our live stream, we're obviously going to show you. Oh, I guess maybe you can tell us, Russ, a little bit more. But we, on top of just showing you things that have worked for us, we also wanted for you to get your hands dirty a little bit, right? So stay tuned, because we might ask you to fire up your Zapier and build something with us later on.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to walk you guys through some specific solutions in the Big Brothers, Big Sisters world, and then hopefully do some hands-on experience. One thing I love to share whenever I'm doing these things is just, I'm going to show you a particular use case that works for the organizations I work for. But as you're watching through this, start to think about your organization, right? Some of the most value that you can see in the automation and AI world is from people who are doing the work. Like if you're solving your own problems, you can provide extreme value when you start to think about, oh, this is how this guy Russ uses these tools. How can I apply this to my workplace and my problems and start solving problems? And the impact of that can be massive.
Brilliant. I can see in the chat we've got a couple educators as well. So that's great. Well, now
I
you
love that.
found your crowd.
Yeah. Welcome. So I mean, I'll dive in here. One thing that I love to start with, and Claudia mentioned this, is one of my kind of core values and core challenges is like, how do we as organizations leverage technology to increase our human connection and not decrease it? We work in a primarily Big Brothers Big Sisters service oriented space, and we want to make sure that we're not using AI to eliminate our connection to the community, but we're using it to increase our connection, right? So if we're automating busy work, that means we're doing that so we can spend more time serving the people that are a part of our organization and serving our communities well through these mentoring programs. So I'm going to start with our first challenge. So the first challenge we have is all about data. And I think everybody has data in some kind of aspect or some kind of way, right? Our data happens to be very particular to kind of about the stories and youth in our programs and surveys and data about how we're working with kids. But the reality is our data kind of lives everywhere. We mostly use a Salesforce platform. We call it internally Matchforce. But even inside that system, our data lives in a lot of different places. If you want to learn about someone in our program, so it can be hard to get that whole picture. And then it can also be hard to extract meaningful insights from that data. There's certain things that we can learn that on the surface level might not present itself when we're looking at the data. But if you dive a little bit more, there's more meaningful insights below the surface. So we had an opportunity here. The opportunity was, how do we transform this isolated data into pointing to our mission-driven narratives, right? How do we tell story out of this data? We have a great mission. We know we're making an impact in the community. How do we start to tell that story? Then how do we empower our team members with actionable insights, right? How do we give them things that when they're serving students in our community, how can we provide them with the tools to have insights that they can take action when they need to immediately, right? And then how can we amplify our impact through that storytelling, right? When I first started working for Big Brothers Big Sisters, I had not heard of it before. And I thought, that seems like a crazy thing. I was an educator. I worked with students. Here's this mentoring program in our local community. So how do we start to use these systems to tell that story, to make sure people know about our organization wherever it is? So we all love stories, right? But the thing we would run into is we would tend to repeat the same stories over and over again, right? I fell into the same trap. We'd have really powerful stories of connections that a youth and a mentor made, but we tend to tell that story over and over again. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, but we serve over 300 kids every year, and that's 300 stories we want to tell. So that's where we land in the first one, right? We have these untold narratives. So we have these powerful moments that are happening daily within our organization, and those stories aren't necessarily getting told. So we had the opportunity to find an AI solution to automate a system that finds and tells those stories. And that's what I'm going to walk us through. So I call this the Match Story Generator. And essentially what it does is it triggers every morning to run, and it goes into our Salesforce system, and it looks for an anniversary. So have they been matched for a year? Have they been matched for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, etc.? And then when it hits that, it sends out the data that needs to go to different webhooks, and it begins creating stories and sending those stories out to our team and out to people in the organization who can use them. So essentially, from data, we start with Salesforce. We move to an AI writing step. I'll show you some of those steps specifically in a second. And all of those steps are kind of custom to the story that we want to create and how we want to use it. Then we plug that data into a Google Doc. So we take those stories and we put them into Google Docs in our Google Drive. And then we let people know, like, hey, so-and-so story has been shared. Here's where it is. Here's where you can access it. So I know it's hard to see these screenshots, but a little bit of just kind of what it is, right? This first one is the one that triggers every day. And you can honestly see how simple it is, right? There's literally one step that talks to Salesforce, and the rest of them are like built-in Zapier steps, right? But that one step is the one that's going in there, and it's like, hey, do we have any matches that are celebrating an anniversary today? And then that last step for this particular automation, it's sending out that webhook to an automation that's going to tell a match story, and then an automation that's going to develop a match story that's 160 characters or less for our development or marketing team. On the right side, I use the AI step probably in places where I don't even need it. But Zapier makes it so easy to use this. It doesn't cost anything to use the built-in GPT, I think 4.10 model. I'm not a numbers guy when it comes to the AI world, but it's free to use. So I have this prompt that pulls in the data, tells it what to do, and outputs a really cool story about the impact that this match is having on not just the little, but the big too. So then what that story does, let me see if I have this in my next slide, is it actually goes into a Google Drive folder. I know this photo is mostly blocked out because I don't want to share personal information, but I just want to give you an idea
Best
of
practice right there.
yes, exactly. All of these stories go into a Google Drive folder where our team can see them. And then this is where there's a human element to this. So one thing I like to tell people, when you're creating data systems that tell stories like this, you need to be prepared for the output, right? So like theoretically, you could have a prompt that would tell like a 10-page story every time it runs, right? But there's a critical step in between that story being generated and that story being shared. And that's the human in the middle that's reviewing that story to make sure that it's telling the right story, that it doesn't include any kind of bias, that it's not making anything up, and that it's authentic to who we are as an organization. Don't get me wrong, prompts are getting better. Like the systems are getting better to where it's getting us close, but we want to make sure that we have a system to manage that. So our team can go in here, they can review these stories, and they can drop them in a folder when they've been reviewed and they're good to be shared out.
So you're adding the human in the loop sort of step before anything gets published, which is really smart because obviously we can't 100% rely on an AI content, content being AI generated, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I tell people all the time, I think this is true in a lot of lines of work, but it's really true in the nonprofit space, is just like the human element is so important. Like we are
Mm-hmm.
doing work supporting, loving, and caring for humans in our community. AI can't replace that work, right? AI isn't going to know the DNA of our organization like the people who work for it are. So having these steps and these types of processes are huge.
And I think it's really powerful because it can't replace us, but it can help us get to where we want to be at incredible speeds compared to what we were doing before, right? Because I'm assuming uh you were also writing these stories, right, before you built the system. And so how were you doing that? How much time would you spend on writing a story for each kid?
Yeah. So we used to ask what we call our match support team to write these stories.
Hmm.
To be honest, we were probably supposed to write more stories in a given month. But when we ran the data, we were finding, okay, we were telling about 5 to 10 stories a year. Um,
Wow.
and when we opened this system up, we started telling closer to 250 stories a year, right? Of just kind of eliminating that. I mean, we put a system around it, right? We put the system where there's an expectation about reviewing the stories. But then we kind of removed some of that busy work of digging into the database, right? Like
Hmm.
most people don't take a job at Big Brothers Big Sisters to document and do database work and all that stuff, right? They take it because they want to work with the community. So when we can kind of take that off their plate and put things on their plate that are a little more life-giving, that's when the magic really starts to happen.
And I think also what's crucial is that it's not just the number, which is on its own mind blowing, right? It's over 200 stories compared to 5, 10 a year. But it's not about that. It's the fact that it's quality stories that are being produced and published because
Yeah.
you keep adding that human step of reviewing them, making sure that it's following the tone of voice that you want it to have. So yeah,
Mhm.
kudos. I mean, that's incredible work.
Yeah, I went to an AI talk the other week, local here in Chattanooga, and someone shared a graph that I thought was really helpful. Where it's like, if you have this project that you need to get, like your quality expectation is 100%. We used to, okay, this person does it to this percent, and then they hand it off, and they do it to this, and they hand it off, and they do it to this. AI is kind of like, okay, I'm gonna take it to 10%. I'm gonna hand it to AI, and they're gonna get me hopefully up to like 80% or something like that. And then I'm gonna take back over, and I'm gonna get it the rest of the way. So that's kind of what these human in the loop systems do, right? This system,
Mhm.
I'm not getting the team to 100%. I'm hopefully getting them closer to 90 or 95%. And then that human comes in and they do that test of like, does it match our DNA? Does it serve our organization? Is it honest and tell the truth about the stories of these kids and get our impact across so they can push it across the finish line?
Yeah, and I think it's honestly it's so important that you're using data. So that's crucial. So I keep saying, to anyone in the community, make sure that you have good data, because we know the rule: garbage in, garbage out. So if you have good data, you're going to get good results. And then obviously making sure that you don't generate out of nowhere, because you're using the data as, as a backup. So
yeah, absolutely. And I try to go back in, every couple months to reanalyze the prompt, to look at it, to see how it can get better, to see what it can work. And towards the end, as we're kind of tinkering a little bit, I'll show you some of that process of how I work through that.
Awesome.
Yeah. So where could this go? So there's some things we haven't done yet, and there's some dreams that I have about this data. The cool part is once you build that initial connection to like, hey, I know how to get the data out of the system, your opportunities to tell stories out of that data become limitless, right? Like once the technical piece of like, here's how I get it, the data is done, you can replicate that over and over again for different ways. So there's a couple things we've been dreaming up that I think would be cool to implement down the road, right? How do we use these not to just tell stories, but encourage volunteers? Claudia, you worked with kids. Kids are not always the first one to provide encouragement for the adults in their lives, right? So how can we use
I don't know what you're talking about. I
systems?
was their superhero.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely. But how can we use these systems to, especially our volunteers, they might be going through a season where they're discouraged, or mentorship can be hard, like relationships are messy. There's friction there. But that's what makes us better. That's what makes us grow. So how can we create systems to be like, hey, based off this data that we pulled, here's a text you could send to the mentor to encourage them right now, right? Here's something you could really encourage to them. Using it more for mentor recruitment, right? Like looking at that data, thinking about the kinds of volunteers who are making an impact, who've really had success in our programs, and helping tell some of those stories in the community, show tangible impact. And then an idea I heard last week that just went off in my brain like crazy is like, some of our data includes these conversations that we have. So how do we start to encourage kids in our program too, in their own words? Like kids speak such a specific intentional language that they use. Every kid, every human, right? We have our own keywords. We have our words that provide meaning to us. So when one of our kids in the program is discouraged, or they're thinking about what's next and like, oh, college isn't for me, or this isn't for me, or I don't know if I can attain this job, how do we speak that encouragement back to them through their own words? Like, hey, but take a look at this, right? Look where you were a couple of years ago and look where you are now. And man, these are it's like, these are the kind of things that I could talk about forever, because it's like, how does data provide impact? And specifically in this world, right? How does data be a part of that process of just encouraging our kids, encouraging our mentors, and pushing them on to be the greatest version of themselves that they can be?
The good side of tech.
Yeah.
Tech for good.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm going to jump on to the next solution, if that's good with you, Claudia.
Absolutely.
Okay. So this one is a little less based about those stories, and this one's a little bit based around how do we make sure we're supporting our volunteers well, right? Anytime, I think about our no-code network. Like Claudia, you do an exceptional job of this. Like when people join a community or they sign up for an organization to volunteer, they're trusting you a little bit. They're trusting you to shepherd them well, to walk them through this journey, to make sure you're serving kind of what you promised at the beginning. And that's really true for our organization, because we do big pitches to get volunteers in the door, but we also want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to support them well, that they feel that we're providing them everything they need to be successful. So one of the other agencies I work with in Tennessee, it's a office out of Knoxville. They're called Big Brothers Big Sisters of East Tennessee. They wanted to figure out, how do we start sending out just short surveys to our volunteers that also include a net promoter score, just to get some detail about how we're serving, right? And to be honest, this was such low hanging fruit, in my opinion, is just getting some basic surveys out there. And the reason I say that, right? Zapier's been saying this a lot. They're like an AI orchestration platform. So you can almost do all the things in the Zapier system to make this one little kind of survey work. And I'll kind of walk you through exactly what we did. So we wanted volunteer feedback to get program insights to make sure our volunteers' voices were heard. So kind of here's the pipeline, here's the orchestration of that, right? The first one is like just sending the survey. So Same database, we're using Salesforce. We're figuring out like, hey, how often do we want this survey to send out? We send it out in a similar time. We pick it around the anniversary, so 1 year. We internally for Big Brothers Big Sisters, we tend to use the tool Form Assembly. I'll show you a different tool that I use in a little bit, but we use that for form collection. We pull that data into a Zapier table, and then I have a Zapier agent that helps me analyze and extract insights from that data. And there's a couple pieces to this are cool. I'll talk through these pictures, but you can have a little idea of it. So the data is dropping into a table. And the first agent that I have is whenever a survey is completed, there's an email that's sent out. You can see it on the right side that just gives the team kind of a bird's eye view of what they said. What's their overall satisfaction? What's their net promoter score? And based on their answers, kind of like what's the response quality, right? Like how do they feel about our organization? I think this is important because we're responding to data immediately as it happens, right? Like if you think about 10 years ago, how we used to use Google Forms. You put a Google form out there in the world, it does its thing. And if you're like me, you probably check the data every hour. But for a lot of people, you maybe look at the data like once a week, right? Like you're peeking in there, people have filled it out.
You're
But what this
optimistic.
allows us to do, go ahead.
You're optimistic right there. Once a week.
Yeah, probably. Probably. But what this allows us to do is when a survey comes through, we can immediately respond to that, right? Like if it's a volunteer who says, hey, I want you to reach back out, and there's some specific concerns or things that they've mentioned in their survey, our team can respond to that. They can feel that we're being responsive. Because the worst thing you would ever want to happen is to be like, okay, in the survey, I have said, I don't think your team's responsive enough. And then 3 weeks later, you get a response about the survey, right? We want to make sure that we're helping that very quickly. And agents are kind of a key piece to that. The last thing I'll say, I use this a million times in AI in general and Zapier specifically, is you can see it sends an HTML email that's designed very well. I don't code. I don't do HTML. I don't do any of those things. But Zapier, these AI tools make it really easy to just present the data in a user-friendly way to look at it, right? And my next slide will show this a little bit better piece of it, right? We also do these monthly, quarterly, and yearly reviews. So because the data is already running into that system, we have the ability of like, why not, right? See insights about, hey, what did people say last month? What did people say last quarter? What did people say last year? How do you compare that to the previous month, right? So we can have a general idea of like, you can see on the picture there, hey, did our net promoter score go up or did it go down? Did our general satisfaction go up or did it go down? What can we do to respond to those needs and kind of provide that immediate feedback and that immediate help? And if the data is already in the system, it's not that hard to add an agent to like, hey, this agent's going to do my monthly review. This agent's going to do my quarterly review. This agent's going to do my yearly review. And then like we talked about with the last one, once you build the system, there's all kinds of creative ways that you can start to build more stuff around it. Okay, so that's kind of the last of that section and the ideas. And the last thing I'll talk about is just a slide a little bit about like why use AI for some of these things. And there's 3 things I'll just share briefly, right? AI is really helpful in pattern recognition. So when you're thinking about looking at those stories, like telling stories, or when you're thinking about looking at survey data, it's really helpful to identify themes across responses that we might not notice, right? There's stuff that we started doing in our system internally where we're really spending more time looking at surveys, where we're spending more time looking at, hey, why do some matches close early? Like some mentor relationships close early, but some last longer. Like we can use AI to really help empower us with that pattern recognition, and it helps us see things we might not have seen otherwise. It's getting better at some sentiment analysis and understanding some emotional context. Around that, though, is I work with really exceptional people who are really good at their job and know how to like document all of the work they're doing. So we talk about this all the time, right? Claudia just mentioned it. Bad data can lead to bad outcomes. My team is really good at putting good data into the systems, right? I work with exceptional people. They're putting great data in there, and it makes my job really easy. And then finally, just story synthesis, right? The idea of weaving insights into narratives. And that's kind of the whole point, is we have data that tells stories, but it's also telling a narrative, right? It's telling something that happened, but it's weaving in that data, it's weaving in that impact into that story. So not only do we get to platform the impact the organization is having, we get to have some insights as a part of that too, and kind of see the difference in the impact these systems, these organizations are making in our community. So building blocks for Zapier. There's multiple things that I do, but I think it's helpful just to talk like we are probably on tool overload in the world. Like there's a million tools you can use for a million different things. And even in small platforms, right? It's like, okay, where do I use the AI step? Where do I use this app? Where do I use the agent? Like which piece is which? Honestly, my first answer is like, hey, just tinker with what works for you, right? Just play around with it. Try an agent here, try an AI step here, see what works, right? But for the most part, what I found really useful is whenever I'm creating a Zap that's kind of just, it's analyzing really individual steps, it's kind of siloed to this thing, I'll just create like an AI step in that process. Whenever I want decision making, when I'm analyzing data from tables or sending out information based on data like that, I'm going to have an agent that's going to do like the whole work for me. And then whenever I want to like combine that across systems, what I'm working on right now that I'm super excited about is, Claudia, a little bit like what you've done with no code, is building a matching system as people come into our programs to provide recommendations. And a part of that is, well, that is a Zap that's calling out to agents that have the database knowledge that we need, right? So agents is when I can kind of like, okay, I can use these agents across various automations, and I really only have to get one really good prompt. I give that prompt access to the data it needs. And then when we're creating all these automations to send out match recommendations, I can kind of slot that agent in and help me save time throughout that process.
Something that I've noticed as well, that I particularly like recently, is that we're moving away from what we used to call our Zap, our Zap steps, into AI workflows, because now it's so embedded into everything that we do. And the fact that you can call an agent into your Zap editor, or use AI by Zapier, it makes so much sense. The first time that I saw that, I was like, oh yeah, of course, it's not going to be Zaps anymore or automations on their own. Is just going to be playing into that bigger AI orchestration strategy. Is going to be a natural evolution towards AI workflows, which I really, really like.
Yeah, absolutely. And just unlocks so much potential for what you can do too. But what I loved is like, there's no wrong way too, right? Like Zapier is providing all of these tools. And I feel like sometimes like when you're doing the work, my head can get stuck on like, exactly. Yeah.
You just have to like play around with it. And something that we often stress is that process mapping is so important. Identifying the sort of blockers and bottlenecks you have comes way before you even open up your Zap editor. You have to figure out where it is that you're getting stuck, right? And if you can't do that by yourself, please let us know. There's an amazing group of professionals here that can help you get unstuck. And then after we've analyzed your problem, then we can work on a solution. And again, just like what Russ is saying, there isn't right or wrong. You have to like try out different things. There's obviously best practice that we can share, but it's all about testing how things are working with AI, which it also makes me smile when I see AI experts, right, on LinkedIn. There's a lot of AI experts nowadays. I'm like, how do you become an expert? It's something that is still being developed, but hands down, there's so many people that can already do incredible things, and we just keep on learning every day. So
yeah, I joked with an organization last week on my LinkedIn. I think I say I'm like an automation and AI transformation leader, which I put on there as like a tag because I heard it in like a Zapier call, right? But I was telling an agency the other week is like, honestly, we're just problem solvers, right? Like people who do this work just want to solve problems. And at the end of the day, we also like tools that help us do that. And that's pretty much what the work is, right? It's just figuring out, hey, what problems can I solve this week? So I'm going to do a demo now and kind of walk you through just a kind of segments of what I would build, right? So really, I'm like, okay, I don't have any surveys for my organization. And this was a good moment for like, I should probably create some surveys for my own organization and figure out how people feel about it. So I just wanted to do like a quick kind of demo of the steps I might take when I'm taking on a project like this. Like, what would we walk through? Because the reality, when we talked about all those things, there's so many systems Zapier can touch. There's so many things it can talk to. Sometimes you just hit this moment of overload of like, I don't know what to pick. I don't know what to do. So I'm just going to walk through this. So one of my favorite tools for like external surveys, especially in the work that I'm doing, is Fillout. I love using Fillout for surveys. There's a ton of things I could say about it and just brag on it for forever. But honestly, it just looks really good. Like it's a great interface when I'm like sending it out to my customers. But also they have kind of pre-built things that you can pull in and then build for your own. So they have a pre-made Net Promoter Score survey that I pulled in, and then I just added some specific questions for my organization. So you can see at the beginning, right, they have this feedback survey responses. They have that Net Promoter Score, the reason you gave it. Then I added some things for my organization, right? Like, hey, what's going well? What could we improve next month? Some specific organizational questions for me. And then the last one I put, I added this based on the context of what we're talking about today, right? Do you have a story about how our services have helped you? Like, I also want to be better at telling stories about how the work that I do can make an impact for organizations that I'm working with. So I created this survey. Another shout out.
Russ, if
Go
we can
ahead.
just zoom in a little bit. I can see in the chat, people are asking for a clearer screen share.
Yes.
Let us know if
Is that
that's
better?
any better. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you so much.
Yeah, so here's the fill out page, kind of clicking through that, seeing it. And then I'm going to pop over to Zapier, and let me try to zoom in here too. So in Zapier, there's one step that I'm not going to show right now. We might not have time for this, but is like sending out the survey, right? So just thoughts about how I would do that. I'd probably have a table in Zapier that's just a list of my clients who are going to be getting the survey. And then I'd probably just trigger an automation based off that every week, right? One step that I use over and over and over again in Zapier, and I'll pull it up just so you can see, is I use the loop step all the time, right? So if you're pulling data in from a table, like one time, like if you're, hey, once a month, go look at this table, pull my 10 or 15 clients out of it and send them a text of this survey, that looping step is going to save you a lot of time, kind of making sure you can send each of those to those clients. So I'm going to delete that out. So the first step of my automation is like, hey, someone fills out my survey, that data pings this automation. So I created the survey in Fillout. I synced my Fillout account here in Zapier, selected new submission for my trigger, and then I went ahead and filled it out with some test data here. So now whenever someone turns it out, you have it trigger in here to send the data. And then I'm going to use Zapier tables. Zapier tables, I use it all the time. Like you saw all the places I used it before. Whenever I'm going to use something with an agent, I'm always using Zapier tables in order to really quickly and seamlessly be able to review all of that data. Also, a big shout out to the Zapier team. Tables and interfaces and all that stuff I think is included now in that initial plan. So you don't have to pay any extra to get all those cool benefits.
Christmas
I've
is
gone
coming.
crazy with my tables since then. So from there, I just take that survey data. I've pulled that data. I've created the kind of a CSV of that data into the tables. And then you're just pulling that data into the fields in the table. Super easy, right? And then pretty much all I have to do is hit publish, right? Like that's it. Someone fills out the survey, boom, it goes into tables. And then for these surveys, this is kind of the perfect piece when we talk about agents, where I really like to leverage an agent instead of a Zap, because it just handles it a little easier. It's a little less work for me to do it. So here's the table. You can see I have not sent this survey out yet. I gave myself a good rating. So hopefully you'll, just assume that's what people would say. People gave me a 9. We'll work with that. And I put the data in the table. So then the next thing that I would do is I want to create an agent to help me analyze that data. So Zapier has some really good interfaces to help you kind of create instructions for your agent. I use those all the time to help get me started. But just for sake of doing this together, I'm just going to show you what it would look like if I set it up myself. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to add a trigger. And the trigger that I'm going to use is I'm going to go to that Zapier table. And I'm going to say, hey, whenever there is a new record from that NPS survey data table. So now this agent is going to be activated whenever someone fills out that survey and that data drops into that table. It's going to have the data that it needs. So as a former teacher and someone who really just, if I can find a tool that helps make my life easier, that's great, right? So I jump into Claude a lot, and I have Claude just help me think through, okay, where do I get started with this agent? The No Code Ops community does this agent building thing once a month with Bryce. And one of the things that we learned, like as I started doing that, is like there's sometimes nothing worse than a blank slate, especially when you're tackling a new project, right? So to have some kind of tool or something, Zapier's got them built in. I use Claude for a lot. To have something help you not have that blank slate is really helpful. So what I did was I just downloaded that survey, the data from it, into a CSV, and I'm going to plug it into Claude. And I'm just going to tell it, I am building. Also, excuse my typos. I always have typos.
That's okay. Let's make sure that we zoom in again a little bit. There you go. Awesome.
I am building an agent in Zapier to analyze my survey.
To analysis.
Method. Oh, see,
there you go.
What I always tell people when I'm doing this is like, you know what? It understands me. It knows
Absolutely.
what I'm trying
it does.
to say.
It really does. It really does.
It's been trained on all of everyone's typos over time, right?
I can imagine. I'm so happy AI is not like a grammar teacher, or it'd be dead by now.
I would be in great trouble. In great trouble. So I'm just going to ask it to help me create a prompt to use agent. I'm going to start typing fast, which means I'm going to have a lot of typos to use for the agent.
You're in a safe space, Russ. You're not being judged. We're all in awe.
Your data and provide insights for me. The data is attached. I also speak to AI a lot too. Oh man, look at that. The internet runs on AWS.
Of course, the beauty of our live streams and live demos.
Here we go. Just hit refresh, right?
Just for a second.
It likes AWS went down again this week, didn't it?
Oh well, we're dodging all the bullets.
Yeah. So I'll say this again. I think I've said it a couple times. Again, this stuff is kind of built into Zapier. Shout out to the co-pilot team in Zapier. If you ever hate Whisper Flow, yes, that is one of my favorite tools. That's the one I use a lot. Excellent tip. The co-pilot baked into Zapier is a super helpful tool, especially if you're doing documentation. I think if I just pop over to the Zap, you can pull it up here. One of my favorite things to do when I'm working with clients is like, hey, explain this automation to me in plain language in a couple sentences. So helpful for that to get that in there.
Copilot has improved so much. It's become really crucial in all the builds that I approach now.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to plug this in, and I'm going to hit preview, and we're going to test the agent. So you can add knowledge sources to this database. It's actually triggering based off the record, so it's going to have the data there. And then the cool thing about agents is you can kind of just give it access to a tool. You can say like, hey, I want you to email this to me, or I want you to put this somewhere on my internal CRM or whatever it may be, and it can do that for you. So this is just a super simple one, right? Quick summary of the data, what's working, concerns and improvement, recommended actions, and then success story, right? So really helpful tool. You can kind of send it where you need it. Say that again.
Let's give us a little zoom again.
Yes.
Great. Perfect. We're coming to an age here.
Yeah. I probably don't have much longer on the ability to keep my text small on my screen.
Awesome. Yeah.
So there's what it looks like. Yeah. So I think I hit us just at the right time for like 15 minutes of Q&A.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this is incredible. Again, I knew it would have been an inspirational chat, but it's so great to just watch you implement all of these at work. It's not just you testing out things to see what the technology is about. It's more like, okay, how do we implement it into our day to day, which is so important. And it's something that it's a mindset shift when you're just trying to understand what all these new tools are about and all, all the hype that people are talking about. There's so many features, right, that are being shipped every day, so many different tools, even for us at Zapier. But it's like, speak for yourself, Claudia. Yeah, I'm coming to an age. um, but what I'm trying to say is that we don't have to learn all the things, right? You don't have to necessarily know all the things. Just look at the pain, look at the problem you're trying to solve for, look at your day to day and see how you can improve that, right? AI is here to enhance the work that you're already doing. And then you can become creative on top of that. But it's so beautiful to see Russ creating all these systems because he was like, I have this job, I have this role, and these are the things that I'm doing. How can I make them better? How can I make them faster? How can I scale, right? Scale is such an important thing for everyone here. So always look at your own role, the problem you're trying to solve, and then the technology will be something that comes naturally as a solution for you. And Russ, I also love that not only you're keeping us relevant to the industry that we're living today, but you're keeping us human, which is the most important thing. So thank you so much for that. Let's
Absolutely.
open our Q&A. People, if you're still here, I'm gonna hide. So it's just Russ and I here. You mentioned Bryce before, and all I can think about is Bryce in my head, and I keep calling you Bryce, or almost calling you
I would
Bryce.
consider it an honor. So
It's because you guys are good buddies, aren't you? Um, all right, let's open up the Q&A. So I think I have a cute little banner here that I can use. Yes, I do. Drop your questions for the Q&A in the chat. So if you're still watching us live right now, this is your moment to shine. Russ, I also do have some questions prepared for you from people that have signed up to our event today.
cool.
I don't know if, yeah, while we wait for our live audience to drop in their questions, maybe I'll take one of those. What do you think?
Yeah, that's great.
Awesome. All right. Let's go straight into the tough ones. Question from Wendy. How is AI integration in the workplace impacting information security, if at all? And what should we be looking out for to help maintain security and confidentiality while still applying new technologies?
Yeah, I love that question, and every agency I work with asks that question, right? The first thing I would say is I am not like an information security expert in any kind of level or way, right? So I can't answer that question at a high level. What I can answer that question, when I worked in the school system, I did some work with technology, making decisions about what software, what services we use, and students' information is so important to keep private because they might not realize that their information has escaped until much further down the road. So when it comes to AI world, the two big pieces that we're looking at is that, like, hey, are we using enterprise services that aren't like saving our conversations or retraining on our data? So looking at those privacy policies and agreement. Zapier has a really good kind of opt-out policy too. So same thing for them. They're not saving or retraining on that data that you're running through once you're at that paid tier, right? So whenever we look at tools that we're using, that's kind of the biggest piece we look at is they're not saving our data. They're not running it back into their AI system to train it. And then just teaching staff about the things you don't plug into AI systems, right? Like the human element, like we've talked about, is always important. So there's certain conversations that you're probably not going to plug into AI because it just feels sensitive. It feels like that conversation was between you and that person. So just really having the staff negotiate that human element of it too.
Love that. Well, thank you so much. And it's the same for me whenever I get those sort of security questions. It's such a hot topic, but it's like we're not, experts. We can tell you what we've been doing based on obviously the compliance that we have, but they're always a little tricky, right, to
Mhm.
navigate these sort of questions. And with that, let's move on to the next tricky question we have. What safeguards do you think are most urgent to prevent bias or misuse in AI application? I
Yeah.
love that. From
Human in
McKenna.
the loop. Human in the
Hmm.
loop is always the point I talk about, right? Like, if we just had these stories just sitting out in the world, right? Or if one place we're really thinking about like bias is in our potential matching systems, right? Like, there's a lot of bias that could be wrapped into that. But in all the organizations I'm working with, a big key for me and for those organizations is that a human always stands between the AI and the final decision, or they stand between AI and the publish button. And they have that last check of they know what our organization's DNA is, they know what they're looking for, what we stand for, and they're going to make sure that that output matches what that looks like.
Hmm. Yeah. Human in the loop is such an important step. And there's also like all sorts of AI security certifications that are coming out, especially here in or around Europe, I guess. So it's all in development right now. So we'll see, how things change and evolve. Question from Deborah in the chat. Hi, Deborah. What has been your most challenging automation that you've built?
I'd say probably the most challenging one is actually the one I shared about on Zap Connect. And it's kind of an automation that provides weekly updates to our volunteers, but it uses an AI system in order to learn about our process and update them. But the reason why I call it the hardest one is it requires the most kind of hands-on work and maintenance. Because when you're using these AI prompts, there's sometimes something that was working for a few months that might not work again later down the road. So this is always true. This is always the hardest work for me, is continuing to narrow that product down and get it closer and closer and closer to perfect, right? So like, you can get something to 90% and then you get it to 91 and 92 and 93 and 94%. And that, to me, that work feels tedious, right? It's really hard to kind of move those projects and get them as close as you can to like that 99% to make sure it works. And it's still one that we're working on. We're continuing to edit and continuing to make better.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I guess I'll throw it back at you, Deborah. What's your most challenging automation that you've built? Let us know. Question from Ashley. What tools do you use to visualize data?
Hmm. So I don't do a lot of like work with like visualizing necessarily like workflows or things like that. But I have used, if I think about like process or systems like that, I've used a tool like Lucidchart to try to
Mm-hmm.
pull data out of Zapier and pull it back in, and help visualize it that way. And then I don't
We've
know.
got Canvas as well.
Yeah, Canvas and Zapier. So whenever I'm working with a client and we're like analyzing systems, we always start in Canvas to like map out what their current system is and map out their new system. That's probably a weakness of mine though, is I'm not the biggest visual learner. I'm like a wall of text person. So
Yeah, and sometimes it's like, the old pen and paper, just to put your thoughts down and start working on that process mapping that we talked about earlier on.
mhm.
But yeah, Canvas is something that I've recently started using a lot more as well, just because it helps you if you're using obviously Zapier and Zaps and agents and all that. It helps you better visualize how everything comes together. And I think actually I'm quite sure you can you can add new Zaps and new elements of your automation and or workflow, AI workflow, from Canvas itself. So you
Yeah.
can start new actions and things from the canvas, which is quite cool. We had a question here from Daniel in regards to your weekly updates build. What kind of weekly updates? Was it like a Q&A across departments?
For
your most complex build?
Oh, yeah. It's actually for our volunteers who are applying to like join the program. So if you're signing up for Big Brothers Big Sisters, it takes about like somewhere between 1 to 3 months to go through that process. And there's a lot of like in-person things that you just have to do, like government requirements. Like in the state of Tennessee, you have to get fingerprinted, and there's one particular place you have to go. Like, I could talk forever about the complexities of this. So a part of that process is like reminding, right? So you can imagine for the team, if they're following up with 40 volunteers at one time, all 40 of those people are at a different part in our like long process, can get really exhausting to be able to do that follow-up. So this system basically figures out, hey, what is our system? Where is that person in this? Here's what you've done. Here's what you've not done. And just keeps putting that reminder in front of them each week, right? People have the best intentions to provide for our community, but life gets busy. I'm a big brother in our program here in Chattanooga. And I laughed with our team the other day. We have an automation that helps me schedule a call with match support. And it took me a couple of attempts before I like clicked the link and signed up. And I was like, this is why I built this system for someone like me.
I love that. I mean, we're also very busy, but it's just like there's a couple things we need to really make an effort, right? Because the payback is huge. So hint hint, do engage with our community because it's great. Question for you from me before we wrap up. What are you looking forward to next?
Oh man. I am so incredibly grateful to like get to do this work. And like I say that in all sincerity, like when I left teaching, I really didn't have a direction or like a career that I had in mind. And I kind of feel like I would say I stumbled into this. So I'm just incredibly grateful that I get to do this work. I still have new clients that I'm starting to work with in the Big Brothers Big Sisters world, building out really cool tools, starting some work in the development space in Big Brothers Big Sisters. So just excited to kind of continue that work. I mean, I started in July. It feels really new still. But yeah, just incredibly grateful and thankful that this is what I get to wake up and do every day.
It's beautifully said. You know, if you're deeply passionate about something, then you should dive into that and make it your dream job, just like what you've done. And I guess what I've done. Go us.
Yeah.
um, we do have one last question from Daniel. How do you train and show the features of Zapier to people who are new to automations and show them the difference between AI and automations? I've trained organizations on Zapier and this always comes up. Also, Daniel, I don't know if I can't remember if you're in our community or not, but if you're not, Russ is also one of our mentors. So if you want to keep chatting with him, and this goes out to everyone here, you can find him in our Discord. And given that you're training organizations, you should definitely join.
Yeah, I would love that. I would say I kind of tackle them separately, like especially if I'm working with organizations that are kind of new to this work. We're like, hey, we do these AI trainings. We talk about ethical use, environmental impact, and here's how we're going to use it. And here's our organization's kind of mission and goal behind it. And then normally it's a smaller group that we kind of talk through automations and how they work. And normally for Zapier, it's like, hey, where's a small win that might have a big impact for you, right? Like what's something that you find really intensive for the work that you do? It might seem small, but it's always going to lead to something bigger. And I think you kind of follow those two paths. Especially for people where a light bulb goes off, they're going to converge about what if I use AI inside of those things, and that light bulb's going to go off for them.
Yeah, and sometimes like what another community member would say, what do you copy paste every day? Let's start from that, and then you show them you show them what an automation is, and then I feel like agents for somebody who's completely new could be a very easy entry point into this world because they can immediately see the power, right? They can feel like, oh my gosh, I can do this. I can just like speak plain English to this machine and it does things for me. So I've seen that sort of haha moment whenever I show agents to somebody who's not so familiar with what we do. Yeah, as a perfect entry point to AI and what it can do. Alrighty. Well, that's all for today, I guess. Russ, again, thank you so much for being here with us today. Thank you for being an amazing community member at No Code Ops and the overall Zapier ecosystem. I can't wait to keep on collaborating with you for future events. And have an amazing weekend.
Thank you so much, Claudia. Thank you everybody for being here.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, guys. See you next time.